This is a skill video for Unit 2, Skill 1 on angle classifications. And this is the Part 2 video. So it's covering some more vocab for different angles. So first off, we're going to, most of these vocab terms are, go with having parallel lines that you're working with. So let's start by drawing parallel lines, okay? This would be an example, and parallel lines, they never touch, right? They just run alongside each other like railroad tracks. Let's put little arrows on the ends of these, okay? So right here, I'm going to label these. Those are parallel lines, okay? And then they never touch. And a lot of times you might see symbols on a worksheet perhaps that show that two lines are parallel. They might look like this. Maybe extra little arrows perhaps along the lines. So if you see those arrows on these two lines, it means that they are parallel. Now, we're also going to see a third line drawn through these two parallel lines. So something like this. Okay. Now, when a line cuts through two parallel lines, it's called a transversal. Okay. Transversal. And that is a line that cuts through parallel lines. Okay, so I'll be using that term transversal for the rest of this video, as well as referring to the parallel lines, and so that's what I'm referring to. The rest of this video is referring to the names for different pairs of angles that you're going to see. Notice in this picture we have 8 different angles, right? If I were to number them, I could number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, a lot of those angles are the same exact measurement. Some of them add to 180. So whenever you have two parallel lines and this transversal that runs through them, you create these special pairs of angles. So we're going to look at 4 of those. I'm going to move this over to the side. Let's go ahead and split our paper into 4 pieces. Okay, the first scenario, let's draw those parallel lines again. Let's draw the transversal that's going through them. Okay, and I'm going to identify 2 specific angles. Okay, I'm going to identify this angle and this angle. Okay, maybe put little slashes through them. So those 2 angles have a specific name. They are called corresponding angles. Okay, so if we think of that numbering system I used before, such as 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Notice how this piece here, these 4 angles, the way that they cross and the way that those angles are formed is just like this set of 4 angles, right? It's almost like you could slide that box with angles 1, 2, 3, and 4 down on top of the box with angles 5, 6, 7, and 8, and certain numbers would slide right on top of others. Those are corresponding angles. So the ones that I was referring to, okay, was angle 2 and angle 6, and those would have set right on top of each other, okay? So angle 2 and angle 6, they are corresponding. Now there are other pairs of corresponding angles. Angle 1 and angle 5, they are also corresponding, right? They would slide right on top of each other. So would angles 3 and 7, and then 4 and 8. So those are called corresponding angles. And corresponding angles are the same exact measure. Okay, they're the same angle. So let's write same measure. Okay? Now let's draw in another box a similar picture. Okay? I'm going to focus this time on two angles. This one here, and then on the other side of the transversal, on the opposite side. Okay, so these two angles right here. Now, notice that these two angles are inside the parallel lines. Okay, so right here and here, they are inside the lines. And they're also on opposite sides of the transversal. Okay, so you have one on the left and one on the right. So the name for this pair of angles is alternate interior angles. Alternate means they're on alternating sides of the transversal, okay, on opposite sides. And then interior, because they're on the inside of those parallel lines. So alternate interior angles. Now those two angles are also exactly the same measure. Okay, so let's write that down. Same measure. All right, we have two more relationships. Let's draw the picture again. Now I'm going to focus on two angles that are on the outside of the parallel lines and are also on opposite sides of the transversal. So one on the left side and then on the outside again of the parallel lines, but on the right of the transversal. So these two obtuse angles. Okay, so these are now called alternate exterior angles. Alternate exterior angles. Okay. Notice the two angles, they're now outside the lines. Okay, on the outside of the parallel lines, that's why it's the term exterior, and alternate because they're on opposite sides of the transversal. Now these two obtuse angles are also the same. They're the same measure. All right, and finally, the last pair that I want to look at. Let's go back inside the parallel lines. Okay, so some interior angles, but instead of being on the opposite side, so alternating, they're on the same side. Okay, so these two, they're on the same side of the transversal. okay, and they're inside the parallel lines. These we call consecutive interior angles. Okay, that word consecutive can mean like one right after the other. Okay, so here, these two angles, they're one right after the other, one right next to each other, okay, inside those parallel lines. So they are consecutive interior angles. Now, these are not the same measure. Okay, notice that the one on the top, that's the obtuse angle, the greater than 90 degrees, and this one here on the bottom, that is the acute angle. It's less than 90 degrees. Those two are actually supplementary to each other. They actually add to 180 degrees. Okay, so let's write that. These add to 180 degrees. So notice that's the only one of these four different classifications where they're not the exact same measure. Okay, we had corresponding angles that are the same measure. We have alternate interior angles that are the same, alternate exterior angles that are exactly the same, but then consecutive interior. Okay, one of them is obtuse, one of them is acute, typically, and so they actually add to 180 degrees. And those are the main classifications that I wanted to add for Skill 1 in Unit 2. And that's the end of this video.